Hey guys, so we all know how important it is to be really visually alert when you come on scene. Be it fireground, crime scene, or on the battlefield, you need to be able to take all that information in. How we do that is by integrating vision training into what we do with Softleak programming. Come and find out some more.
We're going to talk about vision. I think nobody would argue that vision is probably one of the most important things in anybody's life, right? I want to see the things that I need to see. My buddy, combatives trainer, Jason Kelly, he says he wants to see the world with a bigger set of eyes, right? It's easier to solve problems when you can do that. You drive with a windshield in front of you to protect your vision. You use iPro, and it's all because of the importance of vision. You have to see things, you have to scan things, you have to be able to scan for those things in depth. Just everyday driving, you want to be able to see a couple vehicles in front of you, right? To be able to make decisions. It's not just about looking at the vehicle in front of you or keeping it between the mustard and the mayonnaise. Does that all kind of make sense to you guys, right? Who's going to argue about the importance of vision?
So from the fire side, one of the really important pieces for us is we drive a humongous truck pretty quickly through traffic. People have the radios up, they're not paying attention. You have to be able to make that split-second decision whether you're going to go right or left, whether you're going to go into incoming traffic. Kid runs out in front of you, you got to be able to make those decisions like that. So having as good a vision as possible is going to help you with those decisions, could possibly save someone's life, especially if you're driving emergent through intersections, things like that. It definitely helps.
We see that again and again across the tactical space, that like the margin for error between success and failure is so small. So anything we can do just to give ourselves a little bit more of an advantage is something we should be all over. Like naturally within our community, kit and gear is something that people really geek out on to try and get ahead. But stuff like this is often kind of left on the table. And we know from things like functional MRIs, where we can kind of scan the brain while we're doing things, that so much of the brain's real estate, like the processing power, is taken up and dedicated to the eyes, to the information that's coming in through the visual system. So like unsurprisingly, it's pretty important for how a human responds and functions. But unfortunately, it's something that often isn't really talked about in training. It's something that we leave to when we're on the range, when we're doing kind of high-speed driving courses, things like that. Whereas what we try and do at Softleak is, again, increasing that transfer from what you do in here to what you do out there by making those opportunities to bridge that gap. So what we're going to go through today is just chat through with you why we find vision training so important and so useful, and how you can integrate it in your training, again, in order to better improve your ability to perform while you're on the job. So we've got a few different ways we can look at vision, and obviously it's a massive topic that's incredibly complicated and is something that's ever evolving in terms of our understanding. So we can just start things off real simply by using what we call horizontal saccades. So for this, Danny, if I get you to pop your hands out at maybe say an 11 and a 2 position, something like that. So can you see your thumbs? Yeah. Perfect. So now what Danny's going to do is he's going to keep his head still, and he's going to look and fix his gaze on his left thumb. As soon as he's got a clear image, like as soon as it's not blurry anymore, he's going to switch it to his right, same deal, then back to his left.
So just continue transitioning.
Yeah, you got it.
Back and forth.
You got it, nice and steady, perfect. So in terms of transfer for things like this, not only is his brain getting a massive workout, we also know that things like this are really good when it comes to scanning, so horizontal scanning. So we see it in sport in terms of players doing this so they get better at scanning the field. For our guys, it's going to be entering a room, arriving on scene, where you have to take in a lot of information across a horizontal plane really quickly.
What about, so moving my head versus moving my eyes?
Yes.
Am I cheating myself if I'm moving my head?
So that's a great question. That's a slightly different stimulus. So what we're looking for when we're moving the eyes is, as it kind of name suggests, we're training the ability of the eye to jump from one point to another as smoothly as possible. Now, what we can also do is something called a VOR drill, a vestibulo-ocular reflex drill, where what we try and do is move the head, but keep the eyes and the vision as stable as possible. So we see this when we do our goat drill in a warm-up, where you're trying to move around but keep that head fixed. We talked a lot before about the importance of upper and lower body separation. So can your legs do one thing while your upper body does something else? But equally, being able to keep your upper body still and moving your head, or vice versa, is a huge thing within tactical. Another one of the saccades we can do, though, is vertical. So particularly if you tend to wear a hat a lot of the time, or you operate and wear things where your vision is restricted from above, if you get into that same setup position, but this time with the thumbs, so you can have your feet staggered, feet together, whatever you prefer. That's it. So same thing. So the same concept. We were looking for a clear picture at the top, clear picture at the bottom, and he can only move once he gets that clear picture. This is going to be really good. Again, if you're used to wearing a hat a lot, but you have to look up in your role, that's something that we can really challenge. So if I spin Danny round and get him to take that hand up, that's going to challenge him a little bit more. Does that feel a little bit tougher?
Oh yeah.
Yeah?
Yep.
So this is,
One movement.
you got it. So this is a relatively straightforward drill. There's no pressure. And what we can do if we want to up the ante a little bit is we can use something like a metronome where he's now under pressure. He's got to find that vision really, really quickly. So we can set a metronome to maybe 100, 120, something like that. Obviously, the faster it is, the higher it is. That's it. So if you can hear the metronome, Danny?
I can hear it.
Perfect.
So this is really going to help me if my goal in my line of work, I want to be able to kill something or save something.
You got it.
This is going to lower my margin for error.
So what Danny's doing as well, which is perfect, is he's adding in additional complexity by talking, by having to think what he's saying whilst doing it. And again, we know tactical is difficult. The stuff we do,
I could just do that. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
I'm just really surprised at myself right now.
yeah, well, the stuff we do in the gym is pretty straightforward. It's hard, but it's pretty straightforward. Putting a heavy bar on our back and squatting. The stuff we do in tactical is full of ambiguity. The situations are always novel. Some of the stories we've been chatting about in the evenings on this trip have been horrendous. Some of the things that people have encountered. You never quite know what you're going to see when you show up for a shift or for a call. So having things where we can start to introduce just elements of that into training is huge. So we've talked about saccade, so being able to jump the eyes. Another one we can do is near and far with the same kind of concept. So we can set up, find something in the distance, let's say maybe something 20, 40 yards away. So find something you can see clearly. And then you're going to set your finger or your thumb up a little bit closer. The closer it is, the harder it's going to be for him. Can you still focus at that distance?
Yes.
Sweet. So same deal. You're going to get sharp focus near, sharp focus far, sharp focus near. You got it.
And this is really helpful for target acquisition and also just scanning sectors of fire too.
Yeah. Well, how good at you have been able to switch your vision from looking at something close, like a weapon system, or what we're seeing more and more nowadays, looking at like a handheld screen, to being back able to look up at the scene and take in information. Because remember, all of this stuff is quality, not quantity. We want to be able to take that information in. That's where the money is in tactical. That's where life and death is, being able to process that information coming in. So definitely don't cheat yourself on this stuff. It's really important to kind of make sure you get that clarity, that crisp image.
I feel dialed in. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So we've got a couple more. Another one we can look at is playing around with peripheral vision.
Yep.
So what we can do is, if you find a reference point, so the tip of the spade is perfect for that. Great stuff. And then you can have, we'll start off, we'll just demonstrate on the right side. So you're going to have your thumb up facing forwards. Again, kind of crisp image, and you're just going to slowly track it round slowly.
Head or just eyes?
You're going to keep your head forwards. And what we want to do is track it round, and find your outer peripheral limit. So find the point where you can't see it anymore. So at some point it's going to disappear.
So I think I'm messing this up. I'm following it with my eyes. Do you want me to focus on this and then see where it leaves my?
Yeah. So let's start with this. So what you were doing is more of an advanced version. Let's start with this.
Okay.
So that's it.
So I'm right about here.
Yeah. Keep your eyes forward. Find that peripheral. So we can say, if we look across, we're looking at about 3 o'clock on a clock face, and then we can do the same thing on the other side. You got it. And then the point where it disappears.
Yep, right about here.
Sweet, you got it. So we've got about 9 o'clock on the other side. So for Danny, he's roughly even. Now, for all of this vision stuff, where it can get really interesting is, for Danny, his vision is pretty even, but we have a baseline. So we've talked about auto-regulation training in the past, so having a metric on something so that you know your standard, you know your score, this can be a really useful tool. So what we could do is a heavy set of 5 back squats, and then Danny rechecks. If he's able to see more, we know the nervous system likes it. We talked about how important the brain is. His vision's opening up. That's a positive. That's a win. So we jump in, do another set of squats. Vision opens up more or stays the same. Winner, we'll take it. The minute the vision starts to come down, that's index. We know that's too much. That's too much stimulation for him. And obviously the carryover for that, for tactical, almost doesn't need explaining. We know that the wider that vision, and not just the width, the ability to see things and take in information from your periphery, that's huge. Like you guys clearing a building, Nolan driving, that stuff is really useful.
So do you have any more variations that we can do to help train our vision?
Yeah, so we've got a nice progression. Most of the stuff we've done so far has been fairly static. Like we're keeping things simple, keeping you in one place. But we know that tactical's not like that. We know that there's a lot of movement involved, so we can start to introduce some locomotion. So what we'll have you do is we'll use this as a center point. We'll have you walk in a figure of 8 shape, like an infinity pattern. And as you do that, what we want you to do is keep your eyes fixed on the camera, and that's going to be your focal point. So guys watching at home, if you notice Danny breaks vision or looks somewhere else, this is kind of something to watch.
Be honest.
You got it, you got it.
I'm not an ambi turner, so I don't know what I'm doing right now. I feel like I'm losing the shape, but I can see how this is helpful.
The challenge for this one, so Danny's gone immediately to the more advanced version. Obviously, background, that kind of makes sense. What he's doing is this direction through the figure of 8, there's a point where he loses sight over his shoulder, and he's having to reclaim it when he comes around the side.
Okay, I get what you're saying. Yeah, I get what you wanted me to do. I'm sorry, I apologize.
No. Not at all. So if you start going the other way, that'll be easier, but we can kind of. Okay.
No, well, I mean, so can we use that variation right there? Is that fine? Okay.
Yeah. So if you kind of look that way, and if you start going this way through, the whole time your head is fixed. So that'll be way easier for you. Does that make sense? You're not breaking vision.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So starting from here.
Give yourself a bit more space.
Yeah.
Otherwise it gets a bit tight.
All right. So then the non-advanced version is me simply just having my focal point and doing exactly what you told me to do the first time. But you know I'm great at following directions, so.
You got it.
How does this help somebody who has traumatic brain injury?
So actually, that's a great question. So this drill, this exercise, was initially used and invented by a lady called Dr. Sunbeck, who's from kind of near where we are, upstate New York. And she was a clinical psychologist, generally working with kids who kind of struggle with concentration and memory and things like that. And she found that this, what she termed an infinity walk, doing the figure of 8, the action of moving in that direction while keeping the vision fixed causes both sides of the brain to kind of fire alternatively really quickly. So what she found is it gave you the ability for each side of the brain to kind of talk to each other more effectively. What's really cool is this is not only the assessment, this can also be like the cure, the treatment. So doing drills like this, if you notice, like if you were watching Danny, if you notice at any point he lost sight or his gaze started to focus weird, or he was tick-tocking, like same arm, same leg, any gait dysfunction, that can be a really like early sign that maybe there's something not quite right in terms of kind of the how his brain is functioning. And that can be your early warning, particularly if you're working with tactical professionals who might have suffered from brain trauma or brain injuries in the past, where you might want to signpost them out to someone who's qualified in that, like a neurologist, someone who's qualified in a clinical perspective. But it can also be a great drill because it'll help that sequencing and the firing of the brain.
It makes perfect sense, man. And so we're getting in our vision training, but also some cognitive function as well.
Yeah, and obviously we can. What we've kind of looked at here is real low-key, low-level stuff, just so you can kind of get an idea for it and you can understand the why. But we can rapidly increase the complexity by increasing the speed. We can have you do things like we talked about before. We can have you do other cognitive tasks while you're moving. Are you able to hold a firearm? Are you able to do multiplication, maths problems, things like that, all whilst moving? And the first time we spot some kind of gait dysfunction or some kind of breakdown in vision, we know we've got to the threshold. We know we've got to the point where there's something breaking down. And essentially with all of our training, we want to find that point in the gym before you discover it when you're on duty.
Yeah.